sometimes. Sometimes you have to deal with children or live animals that do not work well, or sometimes orientation is a little off.
We're not sitting at a slant.
We're no.
We can go like this.
We're not on it. It's Star Trek. Good day. This is welcome to Craig Meister's Realm Live. This day I'm joined by my good friend David Leroy of the Feather in Your Cap booth, and he also used to run a Renaissance fair, but we shall get into that later. I have several questions for him to start off with, and then we will just have some general chit-chat, some conversation. So, Dave, what kind of things do you sell at the Feather in Your Cap booth?
So Feather in Your Cap booth primarily is an apparel booth. I make men's costumes, I make hats, I make hat pins, of which you've...
Size it on this way.
Yeah.
Hi.
And I do like 3 different kinds of hats. We make vests and pouches and things like that, mostly men's. But I've sold vests to so many ladies, it's really almost becoming unisex costuming. But so I make all of those, and then I also buy and sell some other material just to help fill out the booth and have plenty of merchandise to sell. You know, it's an industry where you have to have variety if you're going to do well.
That is true. Depending on the size of the fair and what other vendors show up from Renaissance Fair to fair. Very good. And how did you get started as a vendor?
Oh, well, okay. So I went to my first Renaissance Festival in 1977. And my very first Renaissance Festival was the very first Renaissance Festival in California. In my high school group, I was in the drama department. We went there, and I fell in love with Renaissance festivals, and then I moved away from California and didn't even know there was any others going on. And so, fast forward to the early 2000s, and my son, Daniel, who is in a wheelchair, and he has a neurological disorder, he got involved with drama. And even though he had this disability, he was doing plays and getting involved with all the stuff they were doing. Well, they went up to Kansas City Renaissance Festival as a group, and the first year that he could go, he went and they sent a para with him. And she came back saying, there's too many hills and mountains, and Daniel's too big, I can't push him. So they said, well, Dave, if you want to come next year, you can push him around, and we'll just pay your way in. I was like, that's great, I'm happy to do that. And so I went back the next year, pushed Daniel around, we went and looked at all the stuff and had a great time. The next year we came back, we had my mother-in-law make us costumes, and I went and bought a hat, and I'm wearing it around. My wheels are already turning fairly early on. I keep thinking, this is pretty simple. I can make this. I could make this hat. And by the time I got home that night, I asked my wife, how hard would this be to make? She goes, well, it's pretty simple. Okay, so that's when I started thinking maybe I'll make stuff for a Renaissance Festival. And so I began doing a little bit of research and deciding if it was feasible or not, and did I really want to put all the time and effort into doing it. I also pastor a church, and so I'd be away from the church for some weekends, and that was a consideration. And so I was also just praying about it and saying, what do I do? And the first thing I wanted to start doing was making feather pins. That was my first thing. And I began finding feathers literally everywhere I went. I would just find feathers. I'm like, wow, that's coincidental. And then I asked my wife to teach me how to sew, because I had never sewn anything in my life. She had a sewing machine, and so she taught me how to do a simple stitch. And I started going to Goodwill and Salvation Army everywhere I went, and I would just buy big dresses. And I started making all of my first hats out of big dresses. And they'd have bag day where you'd go into Goodwill, and however many outfit or cotton pieces of clothing you could fit into a bag if it was $1.
Oh, nice.
And so my wife was like, if you're going to do this, we have to find a way to do it as inexpensively as possible, just in case it doesn't work. We don't have a lot of money invested. So I'd go find wool clothing, or I'd find the material that was the right kind of material to make the hats out of. And all I was making at that time was just flat caps. That was it. With an elastic bill. I mean, simple hat. You start with a big circle. You sew it over. You run a piece of elastic through. You pull the elastic tight, sew it in, and you're done. And so that's what I started with, that and feather pins. And so we worked for about 6 months making product, and went to Wichita for the Great Plains Festival in the spring, and I made over $400 my first weekend.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, this could work.
Many people could spend $400 in a weekend at a festival.
And so it just kind of grew from there. We went to a couple more little festivals, and then someone saw our booth that was putting on a festival, and he liked the feathers. We said, actually it was Jeremiah. He said, no one's selling what you sell, and we'd really like you to come and do our festival. So I accepted the invitation and went to Omaha that year, and just began adding on events until I found a couple of other hats that I could make, and then I began making vests, and then I designed a pouch, and I've tried a couple of other things. Some things have done really well, and some things have not sold well at all, and it is a trial and error business. My mother-in-law makes shirts for me now, and the shirts is one of her shirts. Shirts sell really well, and we're in it 15 years now.
Huzzah!
So. And we're recognized. I go to events and I see my costumes walking around the fair, and it's a good feeling to see something that you've put your time and effort into be accepted, and actually have customers that come back and say, "Hey, I bought a vest from you a couple of years ago. I want another one."
Very nice.
So,
and I remember you telling me if there's any flaws or anything that goes on with the product you sell, that people can take them back to you and you will fix them.
I've only had to fix a couple, and actually the biggest fix I had wasn't my fault, but I sold the vest to a girl from Norman, and she lost a bunch of weight. And she was really sad. She said, "I can't wear the vest anymore. And is there anything you can do?" I said, "Send it to me." I just cut some off the side, did a stitch on the side, fixed it up for her, and sent it back.
Huzzah. Good for you.
I think that there's public relations that you can do in a business that doesn't really, it cost me a little bit of time, but it didn't really cost me any money. She paid the shipping. And so it made it to where I could do something that helped her that didn't cost me anything. But she's telling all of her friends, if you're going to buy a vest, that's who you need to go buy a vest from.
Very fine example.
Yeah.
Very good. Very nice. All right. And in the past few years, you've reached out and began selling items at indoor cons. Could you prithee explain the different atmosphere that conventions have as opposed to Renaissance fairs?
The con world is a whole different world. And the way I got into cons, I was doing the vests, like I said, and about 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's about 5 years ago at this point, I thought, I could make a Captain America vest. I knew what colors it would need to be, do stripes on the bottom, solid blue on the top, and I thought, I could also do a Green Lantern vest. And I just came up with 2 designs, did the vests, found the patches, put the patches on them, and I just sold them at every event I went to. They sold really, really well, and no one else was doing it. And so the following year, I went to Planet Comicon, and I think I did 42 vests for Planet Comicon. And just any kind of superhero or science fiction movie that I thought I knew what to do, because I can't just make a vest and stick a patch on it. It's got to fit the look of the hero or the comic book character or the movie character that I'm trying to represent. And so I just began to think of how I could do different movies and different characters. And then after that, I just look and see what movies are coming out the following year and say, okay, I got to come up with this vest because this movie's coming out, or this series is coming out. And so Planet Comicon went really well. It was one of the best events I did that year.
And which town is it located in?
That's in Kansas City. Planet Comicon's in Kansas City. Biggest con they have right now, and they had over 20 celebrities there. I met Alice Cooper there one year, met William Shatner there one year. So they get the big names, and it's a big event. But I did really well. In fact, the second time I went, it's Friday through Sunday, and Friday night I almost sold out of a lot of my stuff.
Oh my!
So it was just a great event. But it's a different atmosphere because the people there aren't looking for most Renaissance stuff, and so like my pouches don't do well, my regular vests don't do well, my hats that I make don't do well. So I figured out pretty quickly that I needed to find a business that I could actually buy and sell things from. And that, up to that time I had been like pure, I'm going to make sure that I make everything that I sell, and I'm going to do it this way. And that wasn't going to work for Comicons, and I wanted to be able to expand and do some Comicons. So I found a company that's actually really close to where I grew up in California, and I joined with them and ordered some of their product, and it helped my sales dramatically. And it's one of the lessons that I've learned is that, like I said, variety matters. And if you only sell one thing, let's say I decided I was just going to sell hats, then I'm only going to sell to someone coming to the fair looking for a hat that day. And that means that there's going to be probably 2/3 of the people that come to the fair that day that aren't even going to look at my booth because they're not looking for a hat. So if I want to sell a vest to someone looking for a vest and a shirt to someone looking for a shirt, and I've carried little hand fans at different times, I've carried necklaces, I just try to change up my table once in a while. But the more product that you have on your table, the more customers you have. Because someone may come in there not looking for a hat, but they see the vest and they think, well, I already have a hat, but I don't have a vest. And I'm ready to upgrade my costume, or I need another shirt. I mean, I don't know anybody that does the Renaissance festivals that doesn't have at least 2 or 3 shirts.
It's true.
And so they have their 2 shirts they've been wearing for a while, and they're ready for a change, so they're going to come buy another shirt. And so, having stuff that is upgradable, having things that maybe someone who just started coming to the fair and they just want to spend, my hats are $15, if they just want a hat, they can go spend $15 and get their first piece of costume. And so it's accessible, it's affordable, and but with the Comicons, I just learned that I had to have more variety. And also I do steampunk festivals, and a lot of the masks I buy, goggles and masks, are also steampunk wear as well. So it helps me get into the steampunk festivals as well.
Where do the steampunk items sell better, cons or the fairs?
At every Renaissance festival I do that allow me to sell those things. Some of them say you gotta only sell what you make, but if they allow me to sell anything, I'm like double the money I was making before because I have the steampunk stuff on the table.
Oh, nice.
It just sells everywhere I go. And then I try to do, I'll buy products and I'll change them, I'll add to them, or I'll do some painting on them or something so I can say, no, I didn't make this, but I changed it. And most of the fairs that really want you to be a creator, that's enough for them. As long as you're changing them a little bit, adding to them, or adjusting them a little bit, then it's not something you just bought, it's something that you've done something to, and it's okay to have it. So that's something you have to think about. But the product sells everywhere I go. I bought it for Comic-Con, but it's helped every event that I do.
Huzzah. Very nice. Very nice. So I've been to the TollCon in Tulsa a few times, and I've gone and Gob both times. And it is a smaller and newer event in springtime. And so there are very few people in Gob there. And so I've had people ask me if I do that for a living. I do not quite understand how people get paid to dress up and go to a con or a convention. But if you want to get a little extra attention, go to a con dressed up as you go to the festival, and people might think that you're getting paid, or you know someone that knows someone, or you may be even famous, mayhaps.
You know what I have seen, though? I've seen people that really put together an A-level costume, and they go to cons, and before they know it, they're helping judge the cons.
Oh.
Because they show that they have the chops to know how to put together a good costume. So that does happen. And you may not be being paid to be there, but you're getting recognition for being there.